Good evening, everyone. Samuel, good to have you in council in the back rear. There's Mr. Steese in the back of the room.
Missed the bus.
Missed the bus. So we're going to call this meeting to order without Kim. Are there any public comments?
No.
Do you have a public comment, Ms. Feaster?
I would like to speak if that's
Do you
okay.
want to speak when we get to each item?
That's fine. You're good.
Raise your hand and we'll call you. Next are workshop items. First is the proposed conceptual plans for the next phase of Oscar Frazier Park Field of Dreams and other park improvements. Ms. Kim.
Yes, ma'am.
And anyone in the audience have a comment during this? I'll acknowledge you, get council's thoughts, and then I'll get yours.
Good evening. Thank you so much. We'll move through this. As we know, we've got a busy week with Arts and Seafood Festival. What we wanted to do this evening is provide you an update on where we are with some of our park improvements and then garner your input on proposed park improvements that will be upcoming in the coming fiscal years. We're going to start off with Oscar Frazier Park in the Field of Dreams. What I'd like to call your attention to are these are two concurrently developed master plans, one by the Bluffton Rotary master plan on the left of the screen, and concurrently the 2018 Oscar Frazier Park master plan that was developed by the town. Couple points of difference to point out. Why do I always have a problem with this, Tracy? Here, oh, it was there, and then it went. There we go. I'm too close. Am I too close? Well, anyway, let me put a marker. Here we go. So we have the splash pad that was proposed by the Bluffton Rotary Club, but not near the pavilion where there are restrooms and water currently running. Alternatively, and you notice that there are courts that are delineated, and the recreation court and 8th Avenue corner of the Field of Dreams. And the other 2018 plan, you notice there is no splash pad that's proposed there, but we do have the courts that are sort of penned in. The reason we have the courts on these particular plans is in the development agreement for Bluffton Park. It calls for courts. However, it doesn't specify specifically what type of courts, and that's part of the point of discussion for this evening. It just says recreational courts. So what we currently have in this year's scope of work, as you can see and read, I won't read it all to you, are some hardscape landscape improvements adjacent to the Rotary, connecting from the Rotary Center to the Field of Dreams and out to Bluffton Park. With your input this evening, design and construction, at least the initiation of construction of potential tennis or pickleball courts, or potentially even a basketball court, depending on what direction you'd like to give. And in this year, we have design of a splash pad and then construction in 24, if based on the budget approval. So changing your orientation just a little bit, obviously the Rotary Community Center over here in the lower left-hand corner, we're talking about hardscape improvements coming out toward, what is that? Pin Oak, right? And then over toward the Field of Dreams, and then another set going toward Pin Oak as well. Again, you notice this is a heavily treed area where the master plans have called for any type of court location. We have some trees and we have exercise equipment next to the pavilion where we're currently proposing to put a splash pad.
Why are we going to take out, that was a leadership project.
So it would be relocation.
Where are we going to relocate them?
Potentially around, if y'all are good with it, around the exercise trail itself. So there could be exercise stations along the way. So not obliterating it, but relocating it. And that actually is a point of discussion. So very good. And this just gives you an idea of some of the hardscape improvements around the Rotary Community Center, actually connecting it to some of the on-street parking that we have on Pin Oak. Having a little bump out, tabby concrete sidewalk and bench and decking area shown by this deck and shade trellis and the lower corners. The tabby walkways that would be similar to some of the sidewalks that are in the area already, and a rain garden that would be required just to offset the hardscape per our stormwater ordinances. We're currently at a 50% design completion, rough estimate received recently from Whitmer Jones Kiefer. So we as fluctuating as these values are for cost estimates for construction, this one came in within the last 2 weeks from Whitmer Jones Kiefer, so about $128,000, 500. So all of that is pretty straightforward.
To do the splash pad?
No,
No,
to
just
do
these
just,
4 items.
yes ma'am, exactly. So this is where we get more into a discussion with y'all and what you think and what direction you want us to head. We currently have an alternative where we could fit in 2 tennis courts, which obviously, as noted on the slide, would require more tree removal. We could put in pickleball courts. We have about half the tree removal, but then there have been concerns raised about the sound that comes from pickleball courts, and recognizing that we do have the neighborhood smack dab in the middle of the neighborhood, and we have the townhouses directly across the street from that. So just a consideration there. Some other potential alternatives would be having a single tennis court that could be pickleball, 2 pickleball courts accommodating with some netting and changes that can happen in the design. We'd have to have some nets that go up and down that folks would have to set up, as it says, with roll-away nets down here at the bottom. Another alternative is basketball. You know, the only basketball court that we have in the area is over at the MC Riley Sports Complex, not too terribly far away from here. However, it is an alternative for consideration. So with that background and quick overview, we're looking for some input from y'all on what you think of these things. Our court's still desired. I don't know that we have much flexibility. Being that it's town-owned land, perhaps we do. I would actually look to Heather for that because it's a development agreement.
There'd be some changes that probably would have to take place to do that.
So a bit of a heavy lift to say no courts because it's in the development agreement and not a master plan where we could do a master plan amendment. So if we're moving forward with the courts and assuming that we are per the development agreement requirements, what types of courts would you feel most comfortable with us moving forward with on design? And do we think that maybe there might be another location? Is it the Field of Dreams? Might there be another spot within the park itself that could accommodate these? There might be, Pat had mentioned, and Pat was going to speak, but he's coming off an illness, so he's here for detailed questions, but not for speaking
So you're gonna
alone.
stay away.
So
Let's
that's,
go back to the site plan and maybe that'll help us. So you wanna, like that original one you had?
I had a comment on to
Yeah,
it.
John, this is workshop, so.
Yeah, so,
that one, right?
going back to the notes that were mentioned, it would seem it'd be more feasible to do the basketball option if we're considering things like the tennis court is gonna cause the most disruption to the trees there. There's so many residents in homes in that area, so the pickleball, without having those residents weigh in on that, I'm sure would become problematic with that being there. And considering that we do have baseball diamonds in that area, and Michael C. Riley also has baseball diamonds, it hasn't been a conflict in terms of usage for residents, wanting to go to the area for either. So I wouldn't see that having a basketball court there would pose a conflict. It might make it a little more cohesive in offering an additional option of something to do there that's not just the playground, soccer, or baseball. It just seems that's the less disruptive option there.
No, jump in, I'll finish. Do you have anything on that?
I agree. I've always questioned, I did not realize till tonight that the tennis courts were part of the development agreement. I did not know that. I knew that former town manager pushed for that constantly, and I wasn't a fan of that idea. I did not know that. But, and I don't understand pickleball, with only 2 pickleball courts, you're making it sound like there's gonna be mass noise.
It's loud.
Is that true?
Oh, my Lord. Go to Almer Road, they have 2 courts. Just go there and listen to it. I was at Oldfield and they have 6 courts and only 2 were playing, and it's like gun shooting. It's.
Well, I do agree on the basketball, I think it's drastically needed.
Anything, Fred?
Is there room for, if we did basketball, is there also room for the, it's almost like playing horseshoe, I can't remember the other,
Like a bocce ball court?
what is it?
Bocce ball?
Are you talking
Cornhole. Is there room for that?
That doesn't take
Yeah, you just bring your boards out and set them up and you should do.
But we can't set up a place just with boards already in place, because I would hate for everybody to show up with their own boards.
Well, where are you gonna store the
You have to bring them out every night.
bean bags?
Yeah,
People-
bring your bean bag, but not your board.
I don't know that I've ever seen permanent setup, but we
Is
can.
that something new?
It's popular. It is.
I've never seen permanent watching ball.
And that's just a question, I'm not advocating for it, but it sounds like something the kids are doing. I don't think kids are playing, pickleball. I think adults play pickleball.
Well, they are, it's out now, Tom Brady's playing it. It's on TikTok. So maybe look for an area for future, or we can put bocce area or something.
cornhole somewhere.
I do remember the development agreement saying, I swear people would stand up for us. Richards, is that his name? That was with Village Park Homes, Richard Schwartz was with Bluffton Park and reminded us a lot when we were doing the dog park to remember tennis courts. So let's be sure, because I think the residents are gonna think tennis courts, so we can show them and know it just say courts.
Okay.
So I know you double checked it. And it is in the development agreement, do we get the advice of the residents, what they'd like to see?
We can do that.
Did we get advice for them on the trails and all, or since this was in the development agreement, none of the other stuff was? I'm really not advocating, I guess. I don't know. I like the basketball goal. I think that's fabulous. And it could, like, ditto to Bridget.
One thing I've always asked about, Mayor, was, where we have our Public Works Department. I always thought long-term it would be good to be able to find another location for that and to move that. That's where the tennis courts could go.
That's true.
I mean, then what you have is that whole area is a comprehensive park instead of just having a commercial application right there.
That's a great idea.
We can look into that, because I think I raised that question, and I think Bree put a dash on my dreams about that real quick, because I think our master plan limits what can go there from the land that was deeded over to us. But we can look into that and double check and make sure, because I kind of asked that same question about future development if we were to move public works, and I think I got told no. We can double check.
But be careful, that field is one of the few fields that anyone that lives here can go play,
Wide open
and
space.
someone's on there all the time. I don't want us to creep in and all of a sudden to have a little circle and everyone's, open space is good for people, so just be aware of that. Is that what you want?
I believe so. It sounds like consensus is basketball. We can move forward with contacting a POA and for an email blast to Bluffton Park and ask them and throw out a couple of options. Council's strong consideration is basketball courts. Is there support? Potential other alternatives include pickleball and or tennis, potentially a permanent installation of a cornhole setup. Would y'all maybe have them rank it or something like that and come back with it?
Something is gonna happen there. But
But first off, we will double check the development agreement and ensure that it's vague enough that it just says courts and doesn't specify, or recreational courts and doesn't specify tennis courts. I mean, if it does, then I think
I'm feeling pretty, I don't know, y'all, but if you said you've looked at it. The other thing with tennis courts and not basketball, because we've managed basketball. We're not in Parks and Leisure, so if we did pickleball or basketball, who manages it?
Or tennis, you mean?
Or tennis, I mean, who manages it?
And just first come, first served, you bring your equipment and you play.
But we maintain it.
I would say when you're sending, if you're going to be sending the blast out to the POA, to include some of the details that we were privy to, just so they understand what it's going to take to do those options, because I know we have a general consensus too among residents just on limiting our need and the times that we're removing trees.
We can include schematics like
Right.
this so people can visualize. I'm a visual person, I can't get it in my head, I have to see it, so I agree completely, understand. Okay, perfect, so splash pad.
Anything from the audience on this item?
Sorry.
Okay.
So that's important. Moving forward with the splash pad, again, originally in the Bluffton Rotary Plan, it was in the opposite corner, but it makes more sense to have it up near the restroom area. Again, this would, as we already discussed, have to require the moving of the exercise equipment, not the elimination of it, but the relocation of it around the trail, which kind of fits with the use of the trail. You can tell by some of the pictures in here where they're multimodal types of water features where it's either waterfall or sort of spitting at you, shooting at you, squirting up, that kind of thing. Mostly probably elementary school age to, I was gonna say to anybody who's really hot and wants to get out there. We have fencing around the edge because obviously we do have parking, so there's fencing proposed around the edge. We may need to go ahead and fill it in these other areas between these pedestals, potentially gates, just so that we have a contained area and it's secure.
I'm confused, where's the parking now?
So this is recreation court, so public services would be across the street. Over in this area is where the playground is, Rotary Community Center's up here, Field of Dreams would be, in this orientation, it looks to the north.
You're talking about parking down below where it says recreation court. You're taking the parallel parking out?
No, not taking any
No,
parking.
she's showing where it is.
Yeah, just that there is parking there, making sure kids stay away from the cars.
So you're saying
Similar,
another pavilion?
no, sir, this is the existing pavilion,
Oh, okay.
existing.
Wow, okay.
So it's just, it's moving it into that area where the exercise equipment is currently, their on-street parking is across from public services. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. So are we okay with the idea of moving it in that master plan up over near to the restroom areas? Any concerns about relocating the existing equipment? Again, we're not talking about eliminating, just relocating it. Any particular type, is where conceptual, something you're dying to see, Councilwoman Frazier, as a splash pad feature to go play in, or just good enough? You're just looking for some overall feedback.
Well, and I'll say this, our goal was to have a zero depth splash pad, so it doesn't hold water. It's all matting, there is no there's some where you go in and there's 6 inches or so of water. We wanted to make sure ours was a zero depth version.
Cute and quirky and creative. Bridget, what do you see?
I mean, put me on the hot spot. I mean, I guess it is known that I have an affinity for splash pads. I think the design looks amazing. I am excited to see that we're adding that component. My suggestion would just be that the water features that go there, if they're like low country focused or, have an aquatic focus.
Yes.
Appropriate. Would be really nice.
And what have you. Yes.
And I see the crab in the center there. Is that going to be one of the items for the spray feature?
Yes.
That'd be really
The idea is with shooting up, what have you.
Is that a painted feature with water coming out of the shell, or is that a 3D feature?
I'm not 100%
That's
sure
kind of
right
cute
now.
if it'd be a painted feature with the, be
I
creative.
think it was geared more towards what the frog and lizard are on the left over there, where it would be more of a climb-on structure with water that's coming out of it, so it would be interactive.
Are there other surfaces being considered too? Because I've heard that the rubberized surface isn't always the best, or that it gets a lot of wear and tear after a while.
We'll look into that. Right now, we're at conceptual. We're not to those design specs at this point in time, but obviously we'll keep that feedback. It's great to hear, so thank you for giving it.
Actually, your little note says crab motif in paint and paving. I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't read all your little notes up there. I like your fencing because we've seen that in our other parks with parents. They have one or two children and it's just a good way to slow them down a little bit.
And I think beside the pavilion is good for the parents.
Anything else?
And bench seating for parents as well. So we'll have this curved bench seating so they can sit and watch at various locations.
Samuel, any thoughts on this? You're the one using it, kiddo.
So our next steps then on the overall Rotary enhancement and the sports courts then is to complete the design. We may need to push this a little bit if we're going to reach back out to the community and allow appropriate time for community input. But our initial thought is that we could probably, at the least for the hardscaping around the Rotary Center, get that permitted and out to construction bid in the spring. And the hardscape shouldn't be that difficult. That should be done before the end of the fiscal year. And then we'll work in the sports courts into that as well. Splash pad design and permitting this fiscal year and then putting into construction for fiscal year 24. Just so you know what our timeline is on that. So moving on to DuBose Park. Anything else on Oscar Frazier Park? Okay, perfect. So moving on to DuBose Park, here an aerial of our current conditions out there. One thing of note is that earlier this year, this particular portion of the structure came off due to safety concerns. This was the monkey bars in a slide that was a little bit too angular. Didn't meet current specs. So this is gone. We've had a couple of trees that have had to be taken out, so we have some lawn wear and tear. While this is one of our most heavily used parks, it doesn't have a whole lot of playground equipment on it. Pat took a picture of this one day and we all know that's typically what it looks like. And
Can I stop you for a second?
yes, of course.
I'm confused. Are you saying the slide is gone?
The monkey bars are
monkey
taken
bars,
away.
right.
Yeah,
She said the slide too.
yeah, and the slide because it was angled, so this is gone.
What? You're not gonna replace it?
It hasn't been replaced yet. It hasn't been replaced yet because as we went out there and started looking to replace that piece of the shrimp boat, then we noticed there were all these other needs, and so we decided it probably made more sense to come back
So
to it.
It was Kim's playground, it was her class that did
I
it.
know.
Did y'all get permission from her?
No, we did not.
Makes me very sad. It really does.
That slide that's the main feature, one of the main features out there. It's used constantly.
So we definitely know that we need to put something back.
A slide back?
I'm sorry?
A slide back.
Yes, but we're looking at in addition to that. Mhm.
So when you said you saw there was other issues other than the monkey bars, was it?
It was the slide. The slide was too steep of an angle. It didn't meet safety standards for playground equipment.
You can
monkey
change
bar
the angle, right?
It did when we put it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's changed. Some of it just didn't. When we had Churchich come out and evaluate it, who has been our playground consultant and equipment provider.
Let me leave you with this thought. I highly recommend a slide go back there if you can find a way to do it where it's not a liability. Because if anybody knows, I know that slide gets used constantly.
I did know that.
Okay.
I saw the hand on it too.
Many times.
I mean, we have a slide.
Every
at
grandchild
Oscar
goes
Frazier
on there.
Park. You can find a way to get a slide back here.
So currently what we have budgeted for an enhancements was to put in shade sails. And we have $65,000 earmarked for that large shade sail. But what we are considering and asking is, can we go ahead and instead of the shade sail, postpone that and let's get some more equipment out there because it is heavily used and put the shade sail into a future year. Some of the ideas that we've had are to actually expand to the north of the shrimp boat and come up toward the existing pavilion, which is underneath this particular play structure. So we would have, again, the curved walkway and relocating trellises. This would be the similar rubberized surface, play surface, so that it can withstand the wear and tear. And looking into phases, where in phase one, where we lost that tree, we would go ahead and, where'd my mouse go again? We would go ahead and put in a tower carousel, a net climber, and also a 10-spinner, which is just this little guy up here, so that we had some, again, elementary school aged components out there. Looking into phase two, this is a moon climber, a full moon climber that's much larger than the carousel and accommodates a little bit of a higher age group. I think they both fit with the shrimp boat theme that we have netting out there. And then moving forward, recognizing this is from the very old, when my son was little, and I would take him down when the old public works sat here and play on this playground structure. The tot structure probably needs to be upgraded and replaced, and potentially that could look something like this, a 2 to 5 year old structure, more of a playhouse type thing. Again, that's just representative of something. That's not saying that's what it would exactly go there. And in pushing off the shade sails itself, going ahead and add, whoops, that got sensitive. Whoops, jumping ahead. Putting in, it's actually swings with a built-in shade sail, so that we don't have to do that over the entire surface, but we can protect some of that equipment. So we're looking for some input. Obviously, we're looking at an interim slide before we get some of these other pieces in here. That's heard loud and clear. But what we're looking for is using, instead of that $65,000 for the large shade sail, to go ahead and add some of these additional pieces of equipment. That tower carousel and the 10-spinner on the north side, going ahead and connecting the walkways and some existing trellises with a new synthetic turf underneath. If we have enough in budget carry forward, and we'll see, potentially we might be able to move up the full moon climber, and then looking into 25 potentially for replacing the existing swings with the new swings and the shade sails, and replacing that top structure.
Kim, what's the height of the tower carousel?
That is, can I see that? That's 5 foot. No, that's 5 foot perimeter walk. Does that have it in there, Pat?
Because it looks,
It's 6 foot to that mid-level piece, and that's at 6 foot above.
right. It looks so. I'm concerned with the equipment like that for kids who utilize that area that are so young. It just looks a little risky in terms of if they get up there and are being like rough and playful and someone falls from it. I would be more in favor of something like the moon carousel that just looks a little lower to the ground. That seems it would have less of an impact if someone were to fall off it, either by accident or because someone, shoved them off of it. That's just my opinion. That tower carousel just looks a little dangerous.
That was gonna be my concern as well, and to follow with that, what kind of liability are we have if someone gets hurt?
I wouldn't say any more liability than we do with somebody falling off the shrimp boat. I mean, that's gonna be taller than the tower carousel. So existing to that level, I don't foresee that there's anything else. This equipment, when we brought Churchage out on site, this is what the professional recommended for these age groups.
Could you go back to the shrimp boat? A picture of the shrimp boat?
I don't have one in here specifically.
There was
Outside of
the
this
first,
area, outside
there
of
was the
this
first
area.
one that you showed us that, you said Pat took a picture of. Yeah, so when you look at the shrimp boat itself, it's not like constructed, for them to be able to climb that height. It's more so like, stabilized. So like they're holding on the rails. A lot of the features are lower. It's just that carousel seems at a higher height from the ground with not a lot of the safety or structure that boat has. It just seems like it's an open, free-for-all type thing.
I think it would
Look
be
at
more
this.
like this.
Look at the swing, so the swing set above, on that far right, that's the existing structure that you're talking about, the roof. Go well, I'm pointing to it, see right here, Bridget, they're right there.
Mm-hmm.
And that little tiny slide, that seems like more mass and scale. I'm with you, that's where I was trying to go with it. Because
This guy, this is the
isn't that the
top
guy?
structure.
Isn't that the little thing that's in between the swing and the
In the trip
area?
boat, that's the top structure. Mhm.
Yeah, it's not the one she's
Well,
proposing.
let me, jump in and say this. I have seen numerous children, too many to count, on top of the shrimp boat. And I know they're not supposed to climb up. I see Pat and Constance nodding their heads. I would highly encourage us,
Yeah.
if possible, I don't know what the solution is, if there would be a way, some mesh, whether it's a metal mesh or something at an angle to the top of the shrimp boat that doesn't take away from the aesthetics, something that's a barrier for them to get up there, because they're up there all the time.
Something for them to get up there or to avoid them from getting up there?
Pardon me?
To avoid them climbing?
Yeah, they're trying to prevent them from getting to the very, very top of it. And parents don't seem to care when they do it. They just do it.
My comment on all of this, it seems like we're turning that one little tiny park into a mega Disney. I mean, I feel like the shrimp boat's gonna diminish because it's so cool and naturally built and it was a project. And I don't love the plastic stuff that I see.
Okay.
I don't, and I hate, is this something one of our commissions would have to agree to because it's in the historic district? Not if those shades are, it just doesn't look like DuBois Park to me.
Okay.
And we gotta be careful because you know, Dan's right over there and he sees kids all the time. The more equipment, it's just gonna, you know, kind of like you can't pave your way out of traffic. You can't play your way out of enough playground equipment for kids, and I love it there, but maybe we might not have enough, or are we going overboard? I'm not a fan on anything I've seen really, because I
Okay.
think it diminishes that shrimp boat.
I just always felt that, and I voiced my concern to Stephen and them, I felt the park needed more. Now, I don't think it needs everything, to your point, Mayor, but you know, again, a person who's got as many grandchildren as I have, this park's geared to maybe 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds. Oscar Frazier's geared to all ages. And so a lot of times they go play over here for a little bit, but then I gotta put them on the golf cart, and run them all the way across town to Oscar Frazier, because there's a whole lot more going on over there, and it's a bigger playground. So I would say, at least to my lens, I think it needs something more, maybe not too much, but it definitely needs another attraction, but I don't know what that would be.
And you can already see the next step will be, well, the grass is dying, we need to put in turf. I mean, let's just go on and let's figure it out. Where, if you're gonna put all that on there, remember what happened with underneath the existing, it was that fake stuff. And then we pulled that out and we put in turf. Are we gonna price in turf for some
Yes.
of these areas anyway?
Yes.
Well, that area right there, it says area of tree loss.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but that grass stays dead. I mean, they replenish it and then it dies, and they replenish
I
it
think
and it
because there was
dies.
a tree there.
Bad fungicide or something.
Yeah, I know Derek's struggling with that. So, let me see if I can summarize it. We want some more equipment. We don't want this type of equipment because it's too plasticky, too hard, doesn't fit with the aesthetic. We want it lower, we want to phase it more or make it more appropriate for smaller age groups to kind of keep it like a 10 and under. There are different types of equipment, is that what we're saying? Something that would be approved by, if it's by HPC, modifying the shrimp boat to prevent climbing on the roof.
But let's think about it though. I mean, we don't need to put red, white, and blue in the middle of the historic district with plastic.
No, and you can get different colored plastic for sure, but I hear you, plastic in and of itself, when you have organic materials around it, the netting's a little bit more, again, I think the netting is more fitting in keeping with the shrimp boat theme than a hard plastic, molded structure perhaps.
That's a really dangerous slide on that bottom right picture, and it's taller than the slide y'all took down.
That's only for 2 to 5 year olds. It's not that tall. That's really short.
I'm talking about the picture behind the bottom right shade sail picture back here. Really tall. I don't know what you're hearing.
I'm not either, so I'm trying to summarize it.
Have you looked
I'm hearing in
further?
general, we don't like it. That I'm getting. That we want more, not too much more. We want something that it fits more with the historic district. We want something HPC will obviously
They don't have to. sell
agree
it.
to. I don't know what approval authority they have, to be honest with you, over this. There was an idea of adding in a phase 3, this airtime climber, which is another sort of replace the monkey bars in a more safe fashion. And then, like I said, moving forward, replacing some of the swings with the actual shade tent built into the swings itself. Are there elements of that you like better than, say, perhaps these 3 at the top? What about the shade sail swings, a climber, and a top structure?
How about we go back and we'll take
Or
another
is it
shot based on the comments
Yeah, I don't
that we
like it.
received?
You don't like any of it?
And we'll come back.
That makes it easy
I
then.
like that.
You're very creative on this stuff.
All right,
Sometimes when you're putting these presentations together, it's hard to get an image that has muted colors right off the bat. So you're just trying to project an image of,
You're sorry, because you're so good at what you do.
no problem.
I got a question.
sir.
Oh, how many accidents are being reported out there?
I would have to check with Derek on that. I know part of the reason we took down the monkey bars is somebody complained that their child broke an arm or dislocated a shoulder. Is he back there? Do you know, Derek? How many are you getting?
And again, this was one lady that recently reported that there may be 3 accidents with the monkey bars from broken arms. But again, that was not factual, that I can give you proof of that. She just made a statement that she's seen 3 to 4 kids broke their arm with a monkey bar.
So, if this is happening and it's not reported to the town, and I don't know how we measure that, but, and the other thing is, if it is reported to the town, are we liable for it?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll report it to our insurance, but we get it if they trip off of a sidewalk or they trip off a curb. They can fall walking across flat grass and call and complain, and we'll send it to insurance.
Trust me, I understand that. But we have a playground where we know activities from kids, and kids' bones are fragile. So how do we measure, how do we protect ourselves from equipment that could possibly be a contributing factor?
That's where we rely on the professionals like Churchich, because it's not us.
And is churches selling these equipment?
Yes.
So I don't trust their opinion.
Fair enough.
One last comment, and by the way, I have seen one, in the years that I've lived there, I've seen one ambulance there once. It doesn't mean I didn't miss some, but I have seen one ambulance there once where a little kid hurt himself, and how he hurt himself, I do not know. Where this moon thing, whatever that's called,
Yeah, the full moon climber.
yes, where you chose the location for that on this screen, I would propose, and I'm proposing this to everybody, maybe start there, not with that particular device, but that particular location seems to spread everything out a little bit better.
Okay.
Because the other side, you're getting closer to the pavilion and everything. So maybe just one spot. It seems what I'm getting from this, we don't want too much, and we don't like what's being proposed. And I'm throwing out the idea of a location if you come back with something.
Okay.
And I agree with that, because it's farther, with the concern that running on what's that street, Boundary Street. You're far away from cars, you're in the middle, but you're not taking up some of that playground area from the pavilion and their parties and all, because kids are running around and playing on that grass.
Okay. That works, we can do that. Anything else on to those? We'll be back. Stay tuned, more to come. Don't apologize, that's why we're here, right? We don't want to go down the wrong road with all of this, so thank you. No, thank you. Sarah Riley Hook's cottage update. So I know there I think have been some reports of, again, more leaking in the roof. And the FY23 scope that we had in budget was getting stakeholder input, coming up with surveys, what intended uses did we have for the master planning. We didn't have any preservation or stabilization in this particular year. However, it's reached a point where we have to do something to address it. So Derek and his guys have done a great job in a yeoman's effort and what they can do to patch it up in the interim. In the interim, while we're getting metters on site to come out and give us a preservation plan and what can they do immediately to do a temporary stabilization. So we'll be working on that and prioritizing that. Our next step this weekend is to go ahead and develop and distribute at the Arts and Seafood Festival. Seems like a perfect opportunity to get public input on potential uses. And to that end, there have been a number of different types of ideas kicked around, whether it's another similar structure to the Garvey House. Is it something open for tours? Is it external interpretation only? Do we do some town staffing where potentially that could be an area for Watershed to expand into just because of the location? Looking for input on potential uses that council would like to see on a survey to ensure that we include it.
One that I have was mentioned before. I think it was a suggestion that Stephen gave, but I like the idea because it backs up into a cove, being able to have access for those who do use the river for kayaking, if that could be a place where we turn it into some type of space where it is like a water feature access, or even something. I know we have a lot of our local schools that used to plan trips like that to areas to be able to go kayaking, and I think something like that would be great to add to the questionnaire, see if there's interest in it.
Good to hear you.
I thought we discussed this already. Do we have any notes from the last time we discussed this?
I do not.
No, we never discussed uses.
Yeah, we had.
Well, we were,
We were talking about whether we wanted to be, how we would like to use that property. And I know water access was one, maybe fishing and crabbing, and even the thought of affordable housing, which I don't know if I agree with, but that was.
We could throw on the list.
We had that discussion.
I think it's such a special, I'd love to see this moved up because I think we've overlooked, and nobody's fault, but this is just as important to me as Squire Pope. And there's so much history in this house. If we're gonna use it for office space, we've gotta, I think we need to have the ability to tell the story of the people in it. And if we do that, then we can get ATAX money like we did for Squire Pope and fast forward this. So I'm all about going to ATAX to get this moving faster because it's deteriorating.
It is.
And that's a shame. And again, I'm not blaming anybody, but now if we're on the same page to move it fast track, maybe we can get something going with it. I like the outdoor yard for possible backyard conversation about life in Bluffton. We're doing it Wednesday night at Authors Night. They're having the history, past history. So where can we tell those stories if, just places for people to sit, nothing crazy, but to go out and, I love Stephen's idea. I think we nixed the whole ghost road thing because I like the idea of getting that access back there, to open it up for more touching the water. And I don't remember what we decided on Green Street, but that was in a meeting or two ago. So maybe we look at that. I don't remember. I remember we had a discussion, why do we want the Green Street? And you had, your thoughts on it were great.
So what we've talked about is very similar to what what y'all touched on is looking, and one of the reasons Watershed was mentioned is as we would tell the story of that site, is not only of the family, but how the water has impacted life in Bluffton. Putting that in there with the cultural tie-in to the crabbing, to the oysters, to access to the water being what's tied in, and having that right there on the inlet allows that to be done. And that's where, watershed potentially being in there, that's what their job is to protect that and trying to tie that in together of the water and the value that it brings into the history and the future of the community. So that was part of the discussion we had. Whether they're in there or not is not necessary. That was just something we recently talked about, but that was what we kind of talked about with the future use of it. And I don't know if that was a previous discussion that was had that you're mentioning. That was prior to me getting here, so I don't remember that. I know we've all kind of talked individually a little bit about some of that, but we can go out and kind of get some input and see if there's anything. You never know until you ask. Somebody may have a great idea that we aren't thinking of, but we still, with it being access to the water, we know how valuable that is.
Feel good on all that?
We just want to make sure y'all didn't have something burning that we needed to get on that questionnaire to get out this weekend.
And also wanted to make sure you were aware that we're going to probably be doing some stabilization work sooner rather than later out there.
Yes. All right.
There is a very sweet 8.5 by 11 picture of Miss Sarah Riley. Somebody copied and laminated and put on the tree, and I love seeing that. So don't take that down. It's right on the main tree. After our really insane sign that says we can't hunt fish or whatever, I've never seen that kind of sign in Bluffton before, but.
All right, so then moving on to our next topic of discussion, which is pedestrian safety improvements, which covers a gambit of situations. Do you want to say something?
She can raise her
Okay,
hand.
all right.
I'm just keeping an eye on
Okay, all right, making
our
sure.
wonderful public in the audience.
Definitely. Constance did a wonderful job culling our history of what we have done as a town to address pedestrian safety and safety improvements. There's a whole timeline here. This will be on the website and it'll be part of the minutes. I'm not going to read it to you. But the point is, councils and past councils have taken this seriously and have definitely been making efforts to protect our pedestrians and public safety. Currently, what we have underway is required by law, right? This is the ADA compliance and ensuring that our crosswalks are ADA accessible. And what we're prioritizing based on an evaluation by a traffic engineer is the Godey Road area. Specifically, the stretch that is within, the road itself is within the county's jurisdiction. It's a county road. So we're talking specifically, as you can see, a little bit to the north of Melichamp, coming up by the MC Riley Sports Complex, and then moving south, what would be off the screen toward May River Road. Constance is working on this project right now, and in fact, you'll see that you have, in this upcoming council packet, easements that are coming forward. And what these will include are the detectable warning surfaces, so the knobby bumps, so that you can feel them as you're going across, either in a wheelchair, making sure they're ramp accessible, and or you can detect them with a guide stick. So that is underway at this time, currently funded.
So what does double ramp mean again?
Just so it's not a hard edge step down. It's that little ramp that you see that a wheelchair can go down. You've seen them before. None of these intersections are compliant for a wheelchair at this point in time. So moving forward under what is required under ADA laws, and in that assessment we have, really the point of this map is to show you red is bad. And that means red is prioritized, and that means red is being planned out in future CIP years. And the 5-year plan, specifically the ADA ramp improvements, include Bluffton Road, and that's all in this inset box, Bridge Street, Bruin, Melichamp, Godey, Green, Lawrence, Lawton, May River Road, Pinnett, Pritchard, Hayward, and Worth Streets. The priority value, again, red is the worst, it's the highest priority. If it's a dark gray to almost black, it's fine. Fine enough to be put off. And specifically, you see a lot of those are along Calhoun Street and Boundary Street, And as we move forward with streetscape improvements there, we'll ensure that obviously that they're compliant. So
Well,
again, this is currently what's underway.
While we're on the issue of these safety improvements, has consideration also been given to where current crosswalks are, more of the active pedestrian features like the ones where it'll tell you have X amount of time to be able to cross?
I love your lead-in, thank you.
Go back to that. though.
Okay, sorry.
So the red on Goatee is what you just talked about?
Yes, ma'am.
Some of it.
Some of it.
Okay, so the streets that look of importance, and I know someone's in the audience on Wharf, it's Thomas, Hayward, and Wharf. So what's going on? Are you gonna go through that and show us where these orange and blues are gonna get attention, or you're just showing us?
I wasn't planning on it in this particular presentation. I just wanted to let you know, right now, we're working on the Godey Road, and that's what's in this fiscal year. And the 5-year CIP plan, we'll be staging these out to address these other, from the highest to the lowest priority areas to ensure compliance, again, just for the crosswalks. This isn't overall safety improvement. No, this is just for the crosswalk to ensure that we're compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
And I would point out that the 2 red dots kind of towards the bottom are the corner of Wharf. The 2 red dots, then going up, there's 2 orange dots. Those are all Wharf Street right there, since you were mentioning that. I wanted to make sure that was.
Okay, but that's for.
This is
That's for
ADA
intersections.
compliance,
Okay.
yes, only. So to Councilwoman Frazier's point, where are we going next, right? At our strategic plan last year, we talked about we wanted to enhance pedestrian safety and in making these improvements beyond just pure compliance with regulatory issues. So we'll work with the police department on where their collision data are, because that should definitely be data-driven decision, and also with public input clearly to prioritize intersections for improvements. There is an assessment that can be done that is the Vision Zero Network approach. This has been employed by a number of cities across the United States. One in particular is Hoboken, New Jersey, where they haven't had any type of pedestrian collision or interaction, negative interaction, in over 4 years by employing this methodology. I'm not going to go through the 9 components of the Vision Zero commitment, but it talks about the political commitment, which clearly there is, and making sure that we're collaborating and cooperating with our citizens, making sure it's equitable, and we're using that data. We're thinking in a systems-based approach and not just a one-off here, there, and there, ensuring that we have that community engagement and transparency. Some of the primary ways that they move forward for improving pedestrian safety is by narrowing intersections. And so I'm going to give you some visuals of these in just a second, but the idea of narrowing the intersections is narrowing it from a pedestrian's perspective so that it's safer for them to cross. Think about crossing May River Road is dangerous. I mean, I've done it before, just coming out of the Watershed building and going down to Oyster Factory Park. Even with the crosswalks that exist, people don't pay attention. And so it's dangerous, and there are different ways that we can shorten that distance, and this is why the resolution that we passed to make our desire known to partner with DOT on this is important, because they're going to have to work with us clearly on May River Road, Bluffton Road as well, and all those other streets specifically that we listed. How can we do that? Some of this is improving visibility of the bikers and or pedestrians so that they're not having to peek out around cars, and also that they're more visible. Daylighting intersections sometimes means that you actually take away or reduce parking right up close to an intersection so that it's wider and everybody can see a little bit more clearly. Some are mini roundabouts, just throwing out there some of the information they put out. What does it look like? And this is what I don't have stopping points along the way specifically for y'all. I'm throwing out options this evening to see what your appetite is for us to pursue as we start talking about these issues with DOT and alternatives, as we're moving forward with Boundary Street and with Calhoun Street streetscape designs, as we look probably to the future even for Pritchard Street. You know, we're doing drainage improvements, but we know that we need to do a streetscape out here as well. What type of elements is on our palette for Bluffton? What fits? One idea, and this isn't a terribly attractive one, but you get the idea of what it's intended to improve. This is a curb extension, or essentially this is a low-tech bulb out, where you bulb out the intersection for a pedestrian. And this is where we're talking about shortening the distance for pedestrian travelway. They've gotten at least 5 feet into that intersection. This can be done in a much more aesthetically pleasing way. It actually can be landscaped, and we could have rain garden features in it. But it's the idea of, do we want bulb outs? You can do it with surface treatments. They have planters. I wouldn't have orange cones because that's not terribly attractive. But this was an immediate solution to an issue for $2,000. I mean, again, it's just an idea of what would you like to see. It also could look something like this, where you are, again, uncontrolled intersection crossing. You're extending the crosswalk physical to give folks a safer egress, ingress point for crossing the road.
These are horrible pictures. I mean, we've got to have ULI, we've got to have somewhere in the United States of America that has a historic district that shows what it could look like, because if we don't see it as an example, we look at this and it looks like anywhere US, I don't even know what it looks like. But is there no way to look and go out and find like real representation of what you're talking about?
I can look more, yes, definitely. I went to the source.
I'm happy, and I'm throwing it out at you, I'm happy to look too.
No, I can look more, definitely. I just wanted to get ideas of what elements would you even want to consider? Is it considering bulb outs? Is it considering structures that can be planters that are somewhat reminiscent of our planters that we have down the sidewalks? They could be like that come out and start to shorten that crosswalk intersection.
I don't know that I have a opinion on the planters or anything, but I know definitely I'd ask a question about the sign there that's more so, I guess, controlled intersection crossing, because our traffic in the downtown area has just gotten way heavy, and we have a lot of pedestrian traffic there too. And sometimes, and seeing pedestrians just use it as a free-for-all, they'll just walk too, even with oncoming traffic. And so having something there that's going to guide and prevent, an accident from happening, just because if they see that, then they know that they have a certain amount of time, and then those drivers know too that they can't just take the liberty and ignore the pedestrian and keep moving.
Mm-hmm. So one of the folks that I did reach out to, they have, and this was another bit of feedback that I wanted from you on that, is this is an activated push button system. How much signage, how many flashing lights do you want? There's an alternative that you can, in the crosswalk, activate a push button, and it's run by solar. These two towers or pieces talk to each other through radio signals, and this piece of it flashes on oncoming traffic so that it draws attention to drivers that somebody has activated the crosswalk. Now, I can investigate further on a timer like you see in most cities. That particular spec didn't come with what they gave me. But this particular setup for a normal crosswalk, and or if it was a blinded intersection, if you needed some kind of a notification ahead of time, for a set of 3 of these, it's $20,000. But I didn't know what council's opinion or thoughts are on flashing lights, on more signage on May River Road. Again, before we went too far down a road, what's your appetite for any of these types of things?
So maybe a bigger picture.
Maybe what?
A bigger picture. We have those signs, because I was wondering where our little middle of the road signs are, and I noticed the yellow signs now, and they're just like Savannah. People stop in a big city like Savannah with those signs. So I don't know what are we doing that the city of Savannah is doing right there at Forsyth Park. I mean, it's almost like, and they're all different kind of people that go there. It's not the same traffic all the time. So that's kind of my fault.
Well, it's because too, in a lot of places, when I think of Savannah, even Charleston, they have lights there also that kind of assist with that, right?
They don't.
It's not just the signs?
It's just a sign. If you go down Drayton, because I've been looking at it with these, you go down Drayton and it's just our same yellow sign. But theirs is closer to the road, ours seems to be further off the road. So maybe it's where we move it. If we would just enforce no through truck traffic, and I'm not saying we don't, but I sure see, I feel like I'm tattling on them all the time. That cuts down people who aren't paying attention. If we kind of call it street diet, and I know that was a big ULI thing. I had a note, you know, if the state's gonna do all this, why don't they put a 4-way stop at Hayward and Pin Oak? I mean, that could eliminate trucks, it could slow down traffic, it gives a little bit more space instead of cars going 35 miles an hour. And yeah, I don't know, I know the narrowing thing works, and I heard on one podcast recently, they talked about art, you know, by doing more art in trees, it's almost that vision, that feeling that you gotta go slower. I just think there are more pretty ways to do it, and
that's the
I don't
ball
know,
down.
Beaufort, I just think about City of Beaufort, you know, how do they do it?
They have the buttons.
Do they have the
They
light?
have the buttons. You
Those
push
are
the button and you walk across.
Right.
And they have that solar light thing under the yellow.
I don't know about that. I just
Yeah,
know you
it's
push the
different.
buttons to get across, and then I know they've even used them on Hilton Head. And one other, in the bulb outs, or whatever you're calling that, I told Stephen, like when I went to Hendersonville, I don't know, have you been there in a while? You know, that's exactly what they did. Now, I don't know that it's practical here, because they had wider Main Street, but what they did is in an odd way, they kind of curved their street slightly. And what it was, they had the bulb outs, big, nice, beautiful planters that came off the street a little bit, and you had to just angle to go around it. They actually redid their road that way. But another thing I wanted, if you'll go back, Kim, a couple of spots, further.
Or do you want to go back to the light, or
I
the,
want to go back to where you showed the intersections with the cars and diagrams.
with the crosswalk?
Yeah, back. All right, one thing, again, and let me say, I'm grateful that we're doing this discussion tonight, because I had complained about it for years. See when it says mounted at regular crosswalk? And one of the biggest problems I see, and I'm not saying that the trucks are not a problem, but it's not the trucks. What I see when I come across, the cars don't have a definitive place like this one
Like the
showing
stop bar?
stop. So what they do, they go all the way through the intersection, and you got bumper to bumper, so and Ashley's shaking her head. So when you're walking across, you actually walk between the cars, but then you're leaning over the car that's beside you to see who's coming the other direction. That's constant. I deal with that frequently. So I don't know, it may require more discussion on our part, but we got to do something.
And if we go this route, we gotta think, okay, now we have this and it's nighttime. I mean, I don't go across the street at Stock Farm, and I don't go down to Oyster Factory and across the street. I think it's pretty, they kind of get it in Old Town, like right there at Promenade and Calhoun Street. But it's really, when it's dark, you can't see anybody. And I mean, I know it's a bigger picture, and I appreciate, Dan, I think we all need to talk about it. And is this what you wanted to talk about, Ashley?
I mean, if you don't mind, I'd like to just, I think as you're talking about strategic priorities, you know, for the town, you know, remember the town, you know, is where people live too, not where they just visit or, you know, walk about. And I think for those of us on Wharf Street, we're becoming more and more alarmed. And I, you know, I run these streets. I will tell you, you know, while you say the Promenade's, you know, an easy intersection, it's not. Just what Dan says, you have to look around in their car in between, they're sitting in the middle of the crosswalk. But, you know, I come here, you know, for myself as a resident of Wharf Street. I know I have another 4 or 5 families that wish they could be here, but just couldn't. And as you're prioritizing things, we're asking that you take a look at Wharf Street and what's going on there. There has been a major, and we all love it, okay? We love our neighborhood, but major improvements to a boat ramp. That is probably one of the most utilized boat ramps in the county. And there are major improvements to the park. There are major events going on at the end of the street. And once somebody passes over Bridge Street and leaves the Oyster Factory, they have a decent amount of space to get their speed up in their car to 45 to 50 miles an hour. And we're seeing that. We saw it the other night after the event at the Oyster Factory, kicking off the Seafood and Arts Festival. We're seeing it every Saturday and Sunday for sure with boats that can't park down there, that are alarmingly annoyed because there's not a parking space. They have to go down the May River to park their boats along with their trailers, or their cars along with their trailers. They're going 40 miles an hour without a boat on their trailer, and their trailers are bouncing, and the sidewalks are not large there. And you know, I've seen, my daughter is not allowed to do sidewalk chalk anywhere near the sidewalk at this point. It has to be up, you know, near our steps, because we almost had a trailer come over. It came over the sidewalk and almost hit her on our driveway. It's scary. You know, we have a lot of neighbors, a lot of kids, and we're just asking, you know, we, as my neighbors and I have all discussed, we're willing to do whatever it takes. I've obviously gone online, understanding that it's an SCDOT issue road that has to have a bunch of permissions. You know, for us, we would really like to see speed humps, not bumps. I understand that SCDOT doesn't allow it, but the traffic on that road is becoming worse and worse, and the speed is getting worse and worse. And you know, same thing for May River Road. You know, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what SCDOT will allow, won't allow. But you know, I've seen. You know, I just came back from Gainesville this weekend, who has a major historical downtown that uses speed humps to deter big trucks and utility trucks and business trucks that have trailers from coming down that road by putting those large raised areas in the major thoroughways. But and I think you can do it pretty good. I just ask that you prioritize our neighborhood streets, and that's becoming one of our larger issues.
Wharf Street, Stephen, is that gonna be one of ours, or is one? We're taking down so many in the historic district.
Wharf south of Bridge is ours. Between Bridge and May River Road is DOT.
And that's where we brought the council to ask for us to lump all these roads together as our, we call it our center district or core district, is so that we can work with DOT on those roads and try to put a plan together that encompasses DOT sections and ours. Because ours are a little easier, because on Boundary and Calhoun, as we're working on the streetscapes, we're talking about putting the raised speed tables in there so that there are deterrents from, like you said, people don't want to drive down them with big trucks and stuff like that. And it gives a safe crosswalk that people have to slow down for. It creates that buffer. So the goal is to make it so that people do not want to drive fast down those roads. And that's what the overall purpose is, whether it's doing the bulb outs, whether it's doing the road meandering. The goal is to slow the people down and make them pay attention to what's going on around them. And then creating some safe crossing points like she's talking about, like Kim talked about. But we've got to have DOT's involvement, or else we can't fix some of these issues. And that was the first step y'all took about 2 months ago. So it works.
And as neighbors, we've talked to our neighbors, if there's something that needs to happen with the neighborhood, we're willing to do the work to make it happen. If you need signatures or however that works, we are willing to do that work. So don't think we're trying to place it all on you. I mean, we just see that there's a heightened issue. It's getting worse and worse.
We've done it for other streets, and I think we can definitely push this up. That is the straight, I agree with you. I think I try to look at the bigger picture. We've had people at that park. We need to tell people to go to the next landing. We need someone there during the busy times, because no one's there to tell them to lot still. But then they go and they publicly have every right to put their boat in. But if they're gonna go down Wharf Street, I believe they need, you know, the humps on Hayward. Don't really
They weren't big enough. I
They're
told
not
Mark
big
that
enough
when you
on
built them.
Crosswalk even goes
It's
there.
just, you know, and I think it's just take away from it. look, we love our neighborhood, we love Wharf Street, we love what's at the end of it, and what you all have done with that, it's amazing. You know, but you start, you know, you see the connected dots, you got boats, you got people out in the water, they're out there all day, they're coming in, alcohol's involved, I mean,
We can do a full attack on all levels and make it better, but I thought those red dots meant we were gonna talk about where can we push to put slowing down traffic, like speed, whatever they're called. And I'm all about, I've seen Wharf Street, and the thing is, they're gonna go straight, because if they turn right or left, they're gonna knock down our stop sign.
Right.
You know, and crumble a sidewalk. And if they're gonna go down Wharf Street with their boat and trailer, they can go 15, and we can ask to lower that speed limit and put a cop out there. You know, a couple of times they get stopped.
Yeah.
They're gonna know someone's gonna be there, so I hear you.
Well, we definitely need the strategy for the historic district. We're a walking community.
I agree.
We sell it that way, obviously we're having this discussion tonight because all of us are concerned. I want to say also, Derek, and I would rather have them than not have them, but how many of those yellow signs have you replaced on the road in the last few months?
Try anymore.
We're probably 10 in the last 3 or 4 months.
They're not, but I don't think they're any up anymore.
Yeah, they are.
Well, they're not at Wharf, and they're not at Pin Oak.
As soon as I call him, he puts them up, but again, maybe there's something missing, but he's pretty aggressive.
So those trucks are,
See, I
the
call
trucks and the trailers are just tearing them up.
My point is, we had to do something, we had to start somewhere, but what we're doing is not working. So again, I don't know what the solutions are, and maybe we have to have this discussion again. I don't know we'll solve it tonight, I don't know.
Well, is it worth getting someone, and I hate to say study, but it's important, and it's important to have a real visualization of what it looks like in our town at the end of the project, and none of those, I'm sorry.
No, none of these are here.
You just busted my balloon tonight. I'm like, I am just not into this at all. We need to get someone that can get those pictures, and since I'm fussing, I'll find some. But is there someone that can come, ULI, you know, who is that urban kind of, you know, Dover Cole, any of those people that could give us some thoughts to they must have it, they must know, and I can't, and it must work to minimize it. That we are a walking young all over town. So Bridget did want me to say she's all about these lights that have timers, so I wanted to relay her thought.
Is Fred coming back?
Fred's not the other one, we're coming back. So it's me and you, Dan. Anybody want to solve it today? I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
Should we meet with staff, the staff at some point, or do you want to have another formal presentation on this topic?
Can you?
I think we've got
I
some
think we've
guidance.
got more.
Our biggest thing was we wanted to hear what council's,
Wants
what
to
you-
think about.
whether we're on the same right page with looking at trying to, whether it's the bulb outs, whether it's reducing the flow of traffic. The first step is gonna be, if we're not talking about our roads, is finding out where we are with DOT and making sure they're involved. Because if they're not involved, then it's gonna change the conversation on what we can do. But I think we've got what we need to go back and say, okay, we know what council, that you're willing, you want it to move forward, you have some giving us some ideas of what you're supportive of. We just need to make sure they match our community. And so as we start looking to put plans together, we can make sure that they share the vision of what we would want for the community and fit in.
I think we all can have some compassion for Wharf Street, and I've seen it, and I think we gotta raise that up, not just ADA stuff, but what are some ideas to slow that down? And it could be manpower, it could be a combination, and then I bet I've had all 20 residents on Bridge Street and Hayward Street ask me to relay the need, and I don't know what the DOT's gonna do, but I think a 4-way stop at Squat and Gobble and Hayward will
tiresome trucks of coming through when they shouldn't be, because it's yet another stop, and it will slow down some traffic between there and Wharf.
We'll follow up on that.
Well-
I can tell them I told y'all, so.
That suggestion, as you know, when you're coming Thomas Hayward up to May River Road, or the other direction, you can't turn. I mean, literally, you can't turn. You have to just hope that somebody at some point is gracious enough. So that may be something that has to do, and it slows down everything, and even on Wharf, and maybe this is crazy, maybe you put a three-way stop sign there.
Just slow everyone down.
Makes everybody stop.
Yeah, yeah. Now, we have asked that when I get you, Andy, when the streetscape went through, and that was a long time ago, and I don't know, they might have said they did it never.
Updated traffic counts now.
No, we asked for a four-way stop, and they said we need to, basically, people need to die before we put one up there, was basically the answer from Mr. Barrett. So, let's be forceful, and we might need the help of people who know people, and get Bill involved, so. Andy, yes, sir.
So, it's been my experience, a good way of slowing people down, and I don't know if there's an appetite for this, is the traffic speed cameras that take your speed and then send you a ticket when you,
Those are illegal in South Carolina.
oh, are they?
Yeah.
Well done.
South Carolina,
Probably not other tickets in Georgia and Florida.
South Carolina makes it where you have to actually be caught in
I'm
person.
open to the, like Bridget, I'm open to the buttons and something to stop people. I'm open to speed bumps. I'm open to attractive, bump outs if we can do it that way, because I know what yours, I mean, this is our core.
Right.
Whatever we do has to be somewhat
Yes,
attractive.
it has to be aesthetic.
It has to be.
Yes.
So I'm in favor of all of these things if we can do it, with the five of us can come to a consensus on it.
Okay.
Lowering speed limits, all
Yes,
that.
and I figured that, that's why I didn't even bring it up.
And the thing about,
Yes, speed humps,
It's
speed
not
bumps.
gonna matter, but, you know, we can get Officer Roar out there, he can stop, he can know a lot more, many more people. Stop,
The,
you stop a person more than once, they start slowing down, and I can vouch for that.
in Hayward,
I knew you were like, I haven't been stopped in 10 years, because I got stopped a lot.
Hayward Street speed bumps were originally because that was a cut-through road. People didn't want to go down 46, and they would hit the gas,
Yeah.
they fly down through there, and that was to impede that, but they're not good.
They need to be about an inch higher.
Yeah, sharper and higher.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody can do something about that at some point.
You're giving me the feedback I needed.
Good,
Thank you.
good.
And with that, I'm done.
Anything else from Dan or me?
I-
Paul, anything, any questions?
I was gonna mention, you know, when I'm driving down May River Road, there's so many cars parked along there, it's really hard to see people. So if you're getting towards the intersection, maybe taking out a few of the parking spots would allow the cars coming down to see the people at the crosswalks.
We did do that on Wharf, that's a good suggestion.
And Kim mentioned that with the daylighting,
The daylighting the intersections.
to make it clear and more, give more line of sight.
The intersection should be more predominantly at a higher lumen value than the streets you walk. My last comment, believe it or not, for strategic workshop, I would love to see, you know, we're parks. It's what brings a lot of people to our community to move here. I know we've made an effort with the county on MC Riley. Maybe you can bring us an update or more information. I mean, we've all talked about eventually one day maybe having that park, and then y'all did a plan for the park, staff did, and I know we need to keep pushing that button because that park deserves some TLC. It's in the heart of our community, and we can do a better job than they, or at least they need to come to the table and up their game. So if y'all would bring that to the strategic workshop, I hope, something we can discuss.
You know, Shannon might have a presentation of what they wanted to do with that park. Along maybe 3 years ago, we had that meeting out somewhere between here and Beaufort, and I forget where the building was. And she did a whole overview of every park, in Bluffton was included. And I'm pretty sure that park was in there in their plans, but they don't have space.
But that's 3 years ago, too.
I know.
You know, think about that.
Parks and Rec master plan now.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody? Pat? Hope you feel better.
He's like, I don't want to.
Constance is a constant in this town. I see her, I think, every day out, and I appreciate that very much, so thank you for checking on all these projects. You're never here for me to say that